The Indian Himalayan region where we work as waste warriors generates about 8.4 million metric tons of waste. So a big chunk of that, 8.4 million metric tons, over 60% of that, which is about one truck every 3 minutes, is being dumped or burnt in the open. They ask us, "Acha, batao kya chahiye? Tell us what you want. How can we help you?" And gradually we change the conversation. We say, we are not here to ask for help. We are here to help you. So it's important to understand that as waste warriors will scale as a non-profit, lots and lots of local entrepreneurs will scale as for profits. That rubs off on people. Like more and more people become active citizens in those panchayats where we work. They become part of our team, either full time or part time or volunteering.
Hello, Namaskar. My name is Amit Varshne, and thank you for joining me on Impactful Journeys, the podcast about journeys to, with, and of impactful nonprofits in India. Joining us today is Vishal Kumar. Vishal is the CEO of Waste Warrior Society, and today we'll visit Waste Warriors with him. As an introduction, as is the format in this show, we do it only through keywords because you can definitely see his bio and his background on their website, the Waste Warriors website, and on his LinkedIn. And we'll include the links in the episode description. So, Vishal's keywords, the ways I would describe him would be material science engineer, IIT BHU, ILSS, Waste Warrior Society, CEO, Dehradun, Uttarakhand, Dharamshala, Keeling Curve Laureate, Himalayan Conservation, Waste Management, Environmental Management, Circular Economy. विशाल, does that sound about right? कुछ मिस किया मैंने?
नहीं नहीं बिल्कुल I think that sounds right. Maybe you can add that somebody who's also fun to hang around with.
Of course, absolutely. And I think I can definitely vouch for that. So, Vishal, welcome. How are you? कैसे हो आप?
Ekdam wonderful. Like I think it's interesting time for Waste Warriors, interesting time of the year, closing out the previous year, reflecting upon the learnings, looking forward to this year. So yeah, it's an exciting time.
Excellent, excellent. So, let's talk about what is that big problem that we all should know about that you're working on.
It's a seemingly small problem. It's a problem that appears, you know, has a facade of just being a problem of a hygiene and cleanliness. People don't like seeing waste on the streets in front of their homes or in outside their offices. They just don't like seeing trash, and but we see it every day in India. No matter where you live, no matter where you work, you see small piles of waste, you see large piles of waste, you see mountains of waste in Delhi sometimes. But we think it's a cleanliness problem, it's a hygiene problem. The waste just needs to go away, go somewhere. That's all we're able to think. But the magnitude of the problem and the multi-sectoral impacts of it is actually an existential crisis. It's a silent pandemic. It's impacting every species that we can think of. It's impacting human health. It's impacting wildlife. It's impacting our water quality. It's impacting our, air quality. It's impacting every single thing that we can think about. And the Indian Himalayan region where we work as waste warriors generates about 8.4 million metric tons of waste. And most people are not able to visualize that. Forget these macro numbers. Even in smaller villages, people think, oh, waste is not a problem in our village. We don't even generate any waste. But when you actually start collecting it, storing it, and you transport that waste, people are shocked of how much waste actually the village generates. So a big chunk of that, 8.4 million metric tons, over 60% of that, which is about one truck every 3 minutes, is being dumped or burnt in the open in the mountains. And these mountains are home to a lot of species other than humans. So it's really sad, what we're doing, and the scale and the magnitude of the problem is something that impacts each and every one of us. The impacts are not limited to the waste generator or or the marginalized communities. It's actually Each and every one of us generates waste. Each and every one of us is impacted by that, no matter where we live.
One truckload every 3 minutes being burned. Uh, that's just,
That's
yeah,
just in the
it just
Himalayan
just
region.
hits you, and just in the Himalayan region, of course, and that's just in the Himalayan region, and that just hits you. So, what is the Waste Warriors approach in tackling this?
Right. So our approach as a nonprofit, we've been around for about 12 years now, and a lot has changed in the last 12 years since we started out. And
Hmm.
currently we look at ourselves, as an enabler for systemic change. And when I say
Yeah.
systemic change, it's not a jargon that's sitting up there in a piece of document and a nice fancy report that we prepare, but systemic change on the ground, which means changing behaviors of people, of waste generators, changing behaviors of people who are accountable for waste management, changing behaviors of the operators of waste management, right? So changing behaviors of everybody in the waste value chain is core of what we do, going day to day, talking to people in different ways, using different strategies, and changing their behaviors, their perception about waste and why this needs to be solved. The second piece, when it comes to systemic change, is lack of infrastructure in these geographies. Actually, pan India, so we work with local governments and local stakeholders to get access to land to set up infrastructure for waste collection and waste processing. So that's a tedious process. In addition to that, we work at the panchayat level, at the grassroots level, to pass bylaws for waste management, which is basically the law of the land in a local jurisdiction. The smallest jurisdiction is a gram panchayat, which is a
Right.
cluster
Right.
of villages.
Right.
At that level, we set up bylaws, right? Getting all the entire households and communities together and get them to pass a resolution for waste management, which becomes the law of the land, which mandates that every household will pay user fees for waste management, because at the end of the day, there's an economics involved, there's a cost involved in waste collection, transportation, processing.
Right.
That
Right.
part is also needs to be addressed, and making sure that this happens in compliance with labor laws and environmental laws, like no waste gets
Right.
dumped or burnt. So it needs to be
Right.
operationally feasible and economically viable to do so through local and institutional sources. So catalyzing this systemic change is
Hmm.
what the role of waste warriors is.
So, things like the user fees at the panchayat level, and changing behavior at that granular level means that there is hands-on work that is also done, and is that for research and formulating the policy and being informed about it, or actually to um, expand that work and take on and partner with the government doing that work?
No, so at the grassroots level, it actually goes much beyond just kind of trying to do some research work. I think our work is working deep with communities, building trust, building a rapport that goes beyond just meeting some deliverables or ticking some boxes. We are there because we care about that environment, we care about the local communities and local places, and with time that rubs off on people. Like more and more people become active citizens in those panchayats where we work. They become part of our team, either full time or part time or volunteering, in different capacities as active citizens. So active citizenship becomes an important role in the system design, implementation, and monitoring. So that's very core to what we do. So we go actually knock on every household. We have these chai pe charchas where we just gather people on somebody's roof, or somebody's garden, just have a chai pe charcha, like conversation over tea. Like, okay, here's, this is what's happening. What do we do about it? Get inputs from them, do focus group discussions with them, get them to come and do behavior change campaigns in neighboring communities. So it's a very deep, entrenched grassroots work, which requires continuous effort, and it requires, people on the ground, because you can't do behavior change, just by putting up like one
In an ivory
signboard
tower.
and expect
Yeah.
that people's behavior is going to change.
Right. Right. So, the problem, like you created or you painted a really good canvas of the magnitude of the problem, and then work needs to start from the ground up with the grassroots work as well. When you compare those two, right, how is it, or what is the scale approach that Waste Warriors is pursuing to be able to really make that big dent?
Yeah, that's a good point. I think when we talk about scale, I mean, it has so many dimensions. I think it's really
Right.
important. I've been around at Waste Warriors for the last 3 years compared to our journey of 12 years. In the last 3 years, we've scaled up significantly. We've gone from 3 locations in Himalayan regions to 10 locations. We've gone from a team of 50 to 200, of full-time warriors. We've gone from setting up, having one infrastructure for waste processing to having 5 facilities for waste processing. So we've kind of scaled up aggressively over the last 3 years within 2 states of the 13 Himalayan states. And as an organization, we're looking at being focused within the Indian Himalayan region in the long
Yeah.
term, and in the short
Got it.
term, being focused within these 2 states, Uttarakhand and Himachal. But the
Makes sense.
approach to scale, I think, is what is unique in terms of how
Yes.
we're looking at it.
Got it.
So the way we are designing our interventions now for the next 3 to 5 years is um, thinking in terms of how does the solution scale faster than the organization, because the
Yes.
problem is universal, is pan India,
Hmm.
pan world. Anything that we learn during the process, how does that immediately get transferred to other organizations in the sector, other people who are trying to solve the problem, no matter where they are, especially in the Himalayan region, but no matter where they are. They might be a smaller organization, they may be a larger organization, but whatever we learn, right, how does that get transferred to another organization so their learning curve reduces, right? They're able to learn faster, not make the same mistakes we made for 5 years ago. That is also scale. If we are able to
Absolutely.
enable the ecosystem to make
Yeah.
lesser mistakes, to learn from us, so we
So there
plan,
are multiple waste warriors doing that work, but learning from waste warriors. So it's that cascading effect that you create.
absolutely, absolutely. There are already other organizations out there. They're struggling in different ways. New organizations will come up, right? And that's also part of our kind of long-term plan, where we plan to become, like a fellowship and incubator of young, people who will go out and create these organizations in their own spaces. But for that, for the next 3 to 5 years, we need to strengthen our knowledge, internal, institutional memory, knowledge management, and get all the nitty gritties right. If you need to set up a facility, what does it take? There is not a single document right now that is practical, hands-on, that's going to help you, in addressing all the problems you're going to face in getting access to land, and to actually getting a facility constructed and getting it operationalized by a local entrepreneur, right?
So yeah. So on that scale part, Vishal, a concept or an approach that a lot of people consider universal truth, quote unquote, is that you can get scale only if you partner with the government, or partnering with the government is the best way to get scale. And then when we talk of waste, there are some who feel it is the government's job only. It is a utility just like water and electricity. And so this should be done by the government. What is your sort of thinking about that?
Mm. So, um, see, technically, waste falls under sanitation, which is falling under Article 21 of the Indian Constitution, and it is something that is the responsibility of the government, to provide as a service, even in terms of emergency situations where sanitation, is something the government needs to provide. But if you look at the ecosystem in India right now, not just waste, there are a lot of other social and environmental issues. Technically, you can say, providing education is the job, public education is the job of the local government, of the governments, right? Why do
Yeah,
we need these hundreds and thousands of NGOs which are working at grassroots, providing education, providing healthcare? Why should nonprofits work in providing healthcare? That's the job of the state. Providing public health services that's accessible to one and all. It's part of our Indian constitution.
right,
So these are fundamental needs that people have, like health and education, where there is an incentive for the government to provide these services. There's an incentive for people to demand these services. Yet there's so many private players, yet there's so many non-profits filling in gaps in the system. When it comes to environment or climate change, it's an it's not a priority because it doesn't impact us directly on a day-to-day basis. Education and health, we do see an impact that, oh, if my kid studies, they're going to be, get better jobs and they're going to earn more. If their health is fine, obviously people care about their own family's health. But environment is something that we don't really care about. Like, we don't really think that it impacts us, but it does impact us. And that's where the difference comes in, right? The impact is more long term and it's more systemic, and it's something that you can't do anything about. You're going to be, you can't solve it. If you don't solve it now, you can't solve it in the long term. So, uh, that long-term thinking is missing in government systems, right? Like, it's absolutely missing. They're thinking very short-term. They're thinking, how do you, because the administration is there for 2 years, 1 or 2 years, and the administrative body changes. The political system is there for 5 years. They change after every 5 years. There's absolutely no incentive for such long-term systemic change work for anybody in the ecosystem. So we can wait that, okay, maybe someday governments are going to wake up and going to address the problem. And even in cases where they want to solve it, where it's not an intent issue, where they have the intent, they have the funds, but they don't have the knowledge, they don't have the know-how, they don't have the ability to win the trust of the local communities, they don't have the ability to overcome the nuanced problems that you face on the ground when you try to go and set up something like this. Because there might be a brilliant IS officer who's willing to do this, but he or she has no team, right? They are brilliant by themselves and they need a team, and we are actually their team, we're the extension of their team. We are doing it on their behalf with their support. Every project we do, we work very closely with local governments. It's in close partnership with local governments, making sure that they understand that this is their responsibility. And when we start the conversation, when we go, in a new location, new village, they ask us, "Acha, batao kya chahiye? Tell us what you want. How can we help?" And gradually we change the conversation. We say, we are not here to ask for help. We are here to help you,
Yeah.
right? Solve your problem. And that
Yeah.
communication change happens in them after a few months of engaging with us, where they realize,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
Waste Warriors is going to be here for 2 years or 3 years or 5 years or 10 years. But I am from this village. I am from this area. I need to take on this ownership. This is my responsibility, and Waste Warriors is here to help me. So their narrative of looking at us changes, and then they approach us very differently after that. So this takes time, to win the trust. Just to add to that,
So,
maybe on the scale
yes,
question, to add to that, so as a
sure. Hmm.
non-profit, we've chosen a positioning for ourselves as a non-profit that's catalyzing systemic change. Now, an important component of the systemic change is actually, to be done through a for-profit model. So it's an
Right.
embedded
Correct.
for-profit system of local
Yeah.
entrepreneurs,
Right.
local women, local youth who are micro entrepreneurs who benefit from that systemic change. They are the ones who are operating that service of waste management, waste collection, waste processing, waste upcycling, waste recycling. That gets done in a for profit manner where this product or service that's being provided, we act as an enabler of that system, because without that enabling support, this system would fail given the market conditions, given the environmental, given the priorities, and given the geographies we work in. So these are micro entrepreneurs. So it's important to understand that as Waste Warriors will scale as a non-profit, lots and lots of local entrepreneurs will scale as for profits, right? So that's the approach.
Yeah, the Paryavaran Sakhi model, and I've
Absolutely.
written about it, and I'm a big fan of that. Um, so, Vishal, let's talk about Vishal a little bit. What has been your story in involving yourself in this endeavor, and also what gets you up? Are there stories or people that you've met or things that have had an impact on you?
Um, so I think uh, waste is a unique problem. It's like it's a curse. When you start seeing it, you can't unsee it. So
Yeah.
this journey for me started, very very long time back. When as an undergrad student, I moved from Chennai to Varanasi. Traveling 40 hours on trains on a periodic basis from South India to North India. It's like more than 2,000 kilometers. Across this journey, you see outside. You see the changing
Yeah.
landscapes. You see, the real country that's actually changing in so many ways. The food
Right.
changes, the culture changes, the language changes so many times throughout the journey. But one thing didn't change at that point of time, which was trash on railway tracks. And when I saw that, I just
Very
couldn't
true.
unsee it. I just couldn't stop thinking, what happens to this? Like, okay, we're throwing it all, but where does it all go? What happens to it? And
Yeah.
when you start following that journey, it is mind-boggling. It shocks you, and there's literally once you realize it, then you realize that there's nothing else that you would rather do than be part of the solution, than creating the problem, because it's very, very easy to end up becoming part of the problem when it comes to waste. A lot of other social issues we may not be directly contributing to, but waste is a problem that we all directly contribute to. And
Universally contribute to. Yeah.
when you realize that your waste that you generated, you put it in the dustbin. Let's say, in any, you went to Andamans, you put the waste in the dustbin, and that ended up getting dumped in the river or in the oceans, and it ended up killing a fish, or it ended up killing a
Yeah.
bird. It's your
Yeah.
waste, like it's
Yeah.
on you. Like, how can you not see it? Like, it's just so, like, injustice, that really bothers you. So when you start seeing that, you start realizing that impact, then you realize it's no longer a hygiene problem. It's not just enough to put the waste in the bin anymore. And that happened for me as an undergrad student, when I was in my second year. Started a green club at the campus, mobilize students to start taking environmental actions, not just on waste, but reducing water wastage, reducing electricity, energy wastage. We can talk about renewables. We can talk about all innovative technologies to, generate energy. But what about consuming energy in a respecting the energy that we're already generating? How do you consume that in a way that's good for you and good for the environment? So a lot of environmental initiatives around that I did for about 4 to 5 years as an undergrad student. And then while graduating, of course, you had to make a choice between a career, which is paying well versus pursuing this crazy interest of yours. And I chose the latter. And fortunately, it's been a wonderful journey, in
Well,
fact.
we're all the more fortunate for you having made that choice and that brave choice. And you're really fighting the fight for all of us, and sort of creating more, hopefully, converts. Um, so this is, a brave choice, like we just said. And, there's times I'm sure it becomes overwhelming in a way. Are there other nonprofits, NGOs, founders, inspirational organizations that you look forward to, you admire in this fight?
Absolutely. I mean, I think a leader is driven by so many other leaders. Like, you're inspired by so many stalwarts across the industry. Not just necessarily from the NGO world, like, or the development sector. Like, you're
Right.
inspired by leaders, like by great leaders, by activists, by social
Yeah.
leaders, by non-profit leaders, by for-profit leaders. Who live with integrity and who speak with integrity, who build beautiful institutions that last way beyond themselves. I think there's, yeah, a lot of people that I've been inspired by. But if I were to talk about the development sector, I think my journey started with Sahas Zero Waste in Bangalore. So I was
Yeah.
very fortunate to work directly under Wilma, who was the founder of Sahas as a
Yes.
non-profit in 2001. As a woman in 2001, she was the mother of a special child. Her child was less than a year old at that time. I cannot imagine what she must have
Wow.
gone
I
through for
cannot imagine.
15
Yeah.
years, 16 years before the solid waste management rules came in 2016, which is when I graduated and I joined SARS. But those 16 years, I cannot imagine what kept her going. It must have been, there was no policy, there was no ecosystem, there was no podcast, people appreciating, us for the work we do. There's no conversations on climate change, on environment, there's no money available. But she kept at it. Like, her resilience is something that really, really inspires me. And I've learned a lot by working directly with her, when I started off my career. So I think I'm very fortunate that I got a chance to work with her. Another person that I, got inspired by when I heard, him speak for the first time when I was in Bangalore was Kuldeep from Deep Benefit. So I think they're an organization that mobilizes youth for taking civic action.
Hmm.
And just hearing him speak, I was like in amazed. Like, I was amazed by his articulation skills, by his ability to inspire the entire audience, just holding their attention. Um, Not just by his oratory skills, but also just by the you just know that this guy has done incredible groundwork. Like, he knows
Yeah.
what he's talking about. And we actually have imbibed a little bit of reap benefit within Waste Warriors. So we actually have a vertical
Hmm.
for community activation specifically targeting youth, which is a mini reap benefit within Waste Warriors. So it's something that we've
Very
already
nice.
imbibed, and we're looking to kind of incorporate that into our long-term strategy as well. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of leaders, Pradhan, which is Vijay Mahajan, who's the founder of Pradhan. I've been again very fortunate to actually engage with him
Very
very
nice.
closely. He's founded Basics, which is the group that's behind why Indore is number one for the last 7 years. Uh,
Right.
and he's also the founder of Pradhan, which is a beautiful institution that he created and handed over. So, I've been very fortunate to be guided by Vijay Mahajan, in my early days as a CEO. So I think yeah, I've been very fortunate that way that, people that I've been inspired by, have been close to me, have actually been guided me, in my journey as a leader.
Wonderful. Yeah, no, these are all very inspiring figures, and hopefully we'll get to speak with them and learn more about their stories on this podcast as well. Um, and then, of course, for nonprofits, the whole question of funding comes, and so I'm sure there are supporters, and there are different ways that donors support. There's institutional, there's individual. But are there a few that you would want to call out? Because we want to recognize the fact that the philanthropists are really taking that bold step and supporting great work.
Absolutely. I mean, there's so many of them. I think, we can do an entire series, entire episode of that. We again
And
been
maybe we
very
should. Yeah.
fortunate. We've been very fortunate. I mean, we've had a few tricky ones, but we've had, some incredible supporters. I think incredible partners like, HT Parekh Foundation,
Hmm.
has been like a backbone and pillar for Waste Warriors. When we started out, they started supporting us 7 years ago. When we were a really tiny organization, they just saw Jody, our founder, the love, the compassion that Jody had for the environment. They just saw her and they just wanted to support, and they started with really small amounts. But they were there, they were watching our back for 7 years. They saw us through from being like this really tiny, you know, fragile nonprofit that did not have a vision, that did not have a team, that didn't know what it wanted to do, but just had right intent. So they supported this organization in institutional building for so many years, and the amounts grew with time. Uh, Grew to over a crore, 1.5 a year. Over the course of years, and not just that. I think the way they would review the work, the way they would communicate, would be so much empathy, so much compassion. It's not like they were not following processes. It's not like they were just letting us do whatever we want with the money. Like they wanted to know what was happening. They wanted accountability, which is great, and we appreciate that. But they did it with so much respect, for us, making us feel like an equal. Not like, oh, we're giving you this money, you report to us. Like not being rude, following stringent timelines. Having their processes being very solid, but at the same time being so empathetic in their communication. I think, you know, uh, they would tell us a year in advance that, oh, you know what, next year is the last year we're sponsoring you. The year after that, because of this strategy change, we will not be able to support you. Imagine the amount of time that it leaves us versus a donor says, you know what, contract has expired 2 months ago, we're still talking about renewals. 3 months have gone by, we're still talking about renewals, and then like, oh, sorry, our internal strategy has changed. We can't, support your project anymore. Like 3 months, we have 10 people on team. Like how do you manage that? So I think HT Parekh Foundation, big thumbs up to them. The second, I think, just in the interest of time, is Rohini Nilekani Philanthropies. I think they've been a recent partner to us, but they've been a phenomenal partner, supporting us in ways that we can't imagine. So much trust. They've just believed in the organization. They've come visited us. They were respectful enough to come attend our internal event. Like when we told them that, oh, we are 10th anniversary, we're celebrating. It's a big event for us. It'll be great if you can make it. Somebody actually came down from Bangalore. They spent the whole day, the entire event they spent with us. It's not like, spend just a couple of hours for formality checkbox and went away. That shows that they're included, they believe
The
in us.
commitment. Yeah.
The commitment
Yeah.
was there. And again, they're very creative. They came up with a storytelling grant. They were giving us an institutional grant, and they came up with a storytelling grant. They said, we'll give you this grant to just talk about your work so that you can expand the impact. That nudged us to think in ways we were not even thinking before, because we're like, oh, we don't even have the money to think about these things. So they just said, specifically for storytelling, you use this grant. Beautiful idea, and the impacts of that is phenomenal. Like there was a small grant, but the impacts of that has been phenomenal for us. And yeah, I mean, they've been a big supporter. Total respect for them. In every way.
One of the terms a lot of donors talk about is catalytic support. And I think the ways you talked about that both HT Parekh and the Nilekani Foundation uh, support has been is catalytic not just at the monetary level, but it has been catalytic in a different way by being empathetic, by being committed, and being creative in how you can unlock more impact. So that's great to hear. Um, so finally, then Vishal, challenges at the waste warriors level that you want to share and talk about that waste warriors would want more support and partnership on. And as well, let me make it a two for challenges at the ecosystem level. And when I say ecosystem, you can talk of at the sector of yours, the SDG level, or at the entire Indian NGO ecosystem level that you see and would want to share and talk about.
Again, a long list. One of the challenges from a funding point of view, I think, is continuity of work. So for us,
Hmm.
getting access to money hasn't been the biggest problem. It has been a problem, but the bigger problem is to get donors to continue to support that project, because it takes time to to reach a particular stage, because the CSR norms are for 2 years or 3 years, right? But the
Yep.
system change work we do is takes much longer,
Right.
right? It takes much longer.
Correct.
Just getting access to land takes 2 to 3 years in many cases. So we've had cases where we've had existing locations which are unfunded, but we had to start new locations because the donor was not willing to support existing project locations. So that continuity becomes a big gap for us and builds so much pressure in the system. The other thing is, I think donors in general, it's improving now, but in general, they don't realize that we get 5% admin fee, right? 5% admin fee
Yep.
on most of our CSR projects, and we are primarily
Correct.
driven by CSR projects. The admin expenses, without really investing anything in admin at all, like the bare minimum is 15% right now, right? We just have a two-member
Absolutely.
HR team out of 200 employees. We have a two-member admin team in 200 people, across 10 locations in 2 states. Just with some of these, the admin cost is 15%. So launching a new project is of 10% cost on the head office that we need to sponsor. And where do we get that money from? Like, we don't have any other sources than other institutional supporters. So I think realizing that it's very important to invest in the organization. So what we are talking to donors right now is, while our objective is to scale the solution faster than having to scale the organization, because the organization has scaled significantly. Now we need to scale the solution faster. But to do that, we need to strengthen the organization first. We need to strengthen
Yes.
internal capacities. We need to invest in the teams and technology and the institutional memory that needs to be built for us to be able to enable the ecosystem. Like, you want us to enable waste management in other parts of country, other parts of Indian
Right.
Himalayan region, but we need to be enabled to do that. If we have to be an enabler, we need to be enabled first, and that is a journey which takes 3 to 5 years time. It's not going to happen overnight, right? And it needs intentional effort. So that's, I think, an area where we are currently struggling with.
Absolutely. So on the last, Vishal, a dream. I have a dream. Time to give that speech.
I have a dream that people, everybody, because I mean, one of my beliefs, fundamental beliefs that has evolved with time, is what's good for you is good for the environment. Like, what's good for me is good for the environment. So we do not have to think about solving the problems of the world, do not have to think about solving the problems of climate change uh, as much. Of course, do need to, but the more stronger incentive is going to come when we think about ourselves, when we take care of ourselves. So my dream is that all of us, on this planet, can live a life full of living it full of to the fullest of our potential, living a life that we absolutely enjoy doing. Because waste is a lifestyle problem. You can be confused, why am I saying this? Because waste is actually a lifestyle problem. I'll give you a quick example. Somebody who's so busy, doesn't have time for anything, orders food online, just gets it in a really hot food in plastic packaging, ends up eating really fast, goes into his meeting, so busy, and so much of importance that, oh, I'm such an important person. But is that food that you're eating really good for you? Right? Eating fast food, eating outside, eating packaged food is not good for your body. Eating fresh food, eating locally cooked food is good for you, is good for the body. And that's good for the environment. It doesn't generate packaging waste. It doesn't require storage of so many, transportation of so many kilometers across the rest of the world. It's a simple example, So if I focus on myself, live a good life, live a happy life as best as you can. Obviously, challenges will come your way. And I've seen this, that when people are passionate about whatever they do, right, they live a happy life, which reduces waste, which, reduces a lot of depression, anxiety, waste, everything, So that's what my dream is.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Vishal. This was very, very enlightening, and thank you so much. I hope everyone listening in found this enjoyable and useful as well. Please do share your feedback and suggestions of topics and individuals you want to hear about. And thank you again, Vishal. Thank you so much. Namaskar. Thank you. Till next time.
Thank you so much. It was lovely talking to you.